Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn, and I am grateful you're here. You're listening to the Starting with Gratitude podcast. This is a safe space intended to host meaningful conversations exploring all topics of the human experience. Every conversation starts with gratitude and remains rooted in gratitude. After you listen, make sure to join the community by subscribing and sharing. I am so happy you have joined us. Hi, Zoila. How are you feeling in this moment?
Hi, Jocelyn. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling accomplished today and optimistic.
Yeah. I feel called to ask you, what makes you feel accomplished?
What makes me feel accomplished? Well, today I interacted with so many people, and we were all kind of like very joyful about common goals, and that always makes me feel really accomplished. You know, it makes me feel like we're getting things done together. And I don't know, it feels good. Like I just feel it's one of those days where I'm like, and yesterday too, I had like a very early morning workout, and that always makes me feel really good. So I think I might still be riding like that high from yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was thinking about accomplishments either last night or this morning, I don't remember. And I was really proud of myself for getting like a few things done, but none of them were work related. And I was like, I'm growing. I'm really growing. We always relate accomplishments to like these tangible things that are supposed to progress us in our careers or make us money. Sometimes it's just like, I'm proud of myself for making a really delicious, avocado toast with lox on it and eating it in peace.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And it is really beautiful when you notice those moments of like reprogramming in yourself in a way and like acknowledging it and being like, okay, yes, I'm like becoming the mindset that I really want to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to call it the ritual of life, like taking each moment as its own little ritual, even when you're like using the restroom, like every moment in your life has this possibility to be very meaningful and intentional. It took me a long time to get to a place where I wasn't rushing. I mean, I'm from New York, so it's like we're on the grind. Not only am I from New York, but I was like in the entertainment world, used to be or maybe you still are, but you're just moving. And it's about how much stuff you can pack in a day or pack into a minute or an hour.
Yeah.
And it's just like a lot of thoughtless movement. So I'm very proud that at the age of 36, well, I'm not 36 yet, but I will be in 2 weeks. I am at a place in my life where I'm really able to stop and slow down and then recognize that it's not about how much I got done in a day. It's about what I did and how that made me feel.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a really beautiful, centering, fulfilling destination to arrive to.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think contributed to that?
Oh my goodness. I would have to say, if we're going to talk about like what forced me to slow down, I would say motherhood, because you have to, or at least for me, I had to reimagine who I could be now that I'm a mom and I have this extra responsibility, like you not only have a physical thing that you need to care for and keep alive and feed and entertain, but you're also caring for their emotional support and to to be that emotional support for them, it means that you need to have your stuff together too, you know. And I found a lot of myself through slowing down and staying present and being grounded for him. So that's like, I always say that motherhood is like a mirror, and that you either have to look in it or it will like eat you up. So you have a choice.
Yeah.
You have a choice to make.
Yeah. I feel like the first thing I thought of when you said that was like inner child work in a way. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I did want to ask you like what lessons you've gained from Dakota, like from your son. And I don't know. I just like, I'm not a mother yet, but I've always really looked forward to becoming a mother and what that experience will be like and how that will change me as a woman, as a friend, as a, you know, partner, as a businesswoman. What would you say are like some of those, even from the personality of your child, like what?
Well, the first thing is like we were talking about, slow down, you know, and I often find myself, you know, showing him how to slow down, because little bodies with big feelings, that they don't really understand how to process yet. And so our kids can get very frustrated very quickly. And it's not because they actually are frustrated. It's just because their brains aren't developed enough at the time to process emotions that they're going through at that very moment. So, you know, and I've learned to just be a lot softer because of him. Like now when Dakota gets upset and he's crying, and I don't know why he's crying, I just ask him, I'm like, babe, do you need a hug? And he always says, yes, yes. And he comes and like, I give him a big hug. And sometimes I'm like afraid that he's not going to say yes, you know, but until that day comes, I'm just going to keep offering him hugs when he's feeling frustrated or feeling upset. Because I just think he's just confused. He's learning about this place, you know, he's never been here before. He hasn't done a lot. He's taught me how to slow down and be softer. He's taught me how to just be more playful. Like this kid's imagination is just incredible. The other day we were in the car, putting him in the car seat, and he goes, there's a bug right there. And I'm like, there's a bug in the car. He's like, yeah, mama, there's a bug right there. And I look, and the two lights, the overhead lights in the car are on. And I look, and it kind of looks like a bug face. And I'm like, the lights look like a bug. And he's like, yeah, mama. I'm like, you're so imaginative and sweet and pure. And they just remind you to like, just have fun with life. And he's also taught me, which is something that I've always done, but I guess he reinforces it. It's like, go after what you want. If the kid wants something, they are relentless, you know, and I really appreciate his energy and his candor. You know, sometimes I'm like, all right, dude, like, nah, you're not getting another cookie. It's 9:00 at night. Like, we're not doing cookies anymore.
Yeah.
But I have to appreciate his zest for life, and, you know, how he has not been told that the world isn't for him. So he's consistently in a state of like, I'm allowed to have these things. I'm deserving of these things, you know, and over time, a little bit of that spirit will die, right? Because that's just the life, that's life. But I think that if we can consciously remember that we're deserving of things, you know, it shifts your mindset. And so, because it's not like he's gonna go into a deep, dark depression when I tell him no. He might cry for a minute, and then literally 3 minutes later, he's like laughing and playing.
Yeah.
Because he knows deep down inside that he's deserving of whatever he wants. And that's why he continues to show up and ask for things. And I love it. I'm here for it. You know, he's not going to get everything, but he gets mostly everything he wants.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I feel like you touched on so many admirable characteristics of children and their innocence. Do you feel like his way of being, like, and your motherliness to nurture him has reflected back onto you? Like, do you feel like you've grown to have more grace with yourself? And you also, like, when you're sad, you ask yourself, like, do you need a hug? Like, do you feel like that's kind of gone like towards your self-love?
Yeah, I'm working on that piece still. I'm still very critical of myself. I think a big part of it is because because I'm like, you could not I don't want to say I'm self-made, because I have privilege in my life that have brought me to where I am. But I am a woman, a person who has always just kind of paved her own path. And when you go through that, it's very lonely, right? And so it's often challenging to find ways to lift yourself up. But I'm working on doing that. And I have learned a bit more to have more humility with myself, with my mothering style in particular. Like, when people ask me about motherhood, I'm like, I have no regrets about how I mother. I'm like, I'm a great mom. And I think that is a start for me. And that's like, I feel like that is almost like a trophy that I can carry for myself, that I'm confident enough to say, I am a good mother. I know I'm doing my best every single day. And the other stuff, like getting down on work and even getting down on like fitness or looks, like, it's not healthy, but I think it's way more unhealthy to think that you're a bad mother, because that reflects into your mothering style. So I can confidently mother my child every single day because I know that I'm doing my best, and I give myself that grace. And the work stuff is like, I'm constantly trying to essentially impress people. Like, that's just the business of the work that I'm in. And I think it's going to be a lifelong journey to get to a place where I'm fully confident and I'm never beating myself up ever and ever again. I don't know if I'll ever get there. And honestly, I don't know if I want to, because what does that place even really look like? I want to be consistently learning and feeling like I'm in a place where I want to improve with that particular thing, right? But with motherhood, like, I know that this is something I've never done before. Each moment is always new. And I know that I'm showing up my best for him. So I feel really confident in motherhood. It feels very natural. And I'm happy with that piece. The work stuff, it's like another story. But I'm working on it.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. But that's so beautiful that you confidently feel that way about mothering and being a mother. That's really beautiful.
No other way to show up, because if I question myself, that's doing him a disservice. And that's not to say that I don't hold myself accountable for my behavior. Like, there have been moments where he's driving me nuts, and I've definitely been like, Dakota, just sit down. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, and I always actually apologize to him and say, I'm so sorry. Like, Mommy got a little stressed out, because things happen. So it's not to say that I'm like a perfect mother. It's just to say, I know I'm showing up as my best every single time. And sometimes my best is not like composed.
Right.
That's how I had to show up that day. And that's okay. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I love that you clarified that redefining of best, because our best isn't going to look the same every day. It's variable, on so many things. So I like that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
Before we move on to talking more about self-care and business, I have one curiosity about being a mother and being a parent, in regards to everything that happened last year, with homeschooling, or possibly having to have been a teacher at some point yourself last year. How was that readjustment for you in 2020?
Oh, it was interesting. I think I reflect on this often with my other mom friends, because I think that we were very fortunate to have Dakota be the age that he was when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
He turned 2 in February. He's about to be 3. So he turned 2 in February of 2020, and then the pandemic happened. So he was quite young. And while he was in a cadence of going out with his nanny and seeing friends in the neighborhood, he wasn't in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we were really fortunate in that sense. He wasn't like fully aware. And we spend so much time together as a family.
Yeah.
Like, he's our best friend. The 3 of us are just like the 3 musketeers. So for him, in terms of environment and what kind of changes may have affected him, I feel really good about it. I feel like he's okay. How that affected Zach and me is a little bit of a different story. When pandemic first happened, I wasn't sure what work was going to be like. And I honestly was kind of ready to just be like full-time mommy. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that for a while. We were doing some online classes, and then work started to pick up, and we just kind of had to deal with it and figure it out until we found this outdoor preschool that he's been going to now since about August. Mm-hmm. But from March until August, it was like pandemonium, it was really hard work for Zach and me, but Zach and me are no strangers to hard work. We've been married for 6 years and together for 13. So, and we both know that the secret to a good relationship, or to a healthy relationship, is both parties being committed to work. There's no other, that's the hack. Committed to work. Love, unfortunately, in my opinion, does not cure all. Like, you both have to be willing to, you can love somebody and just not be showing up properly in that relationship. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And there are people that don't necessarily love each other like that, but they have a very good relationship, and it works. So we had to dig deep, at some points during the pandemic, between us as a couple, between us as friends, and as a relationship, as a unit. Sometimes I think of marriage as like a business, the way that you have to run your home. There's schedules and there are responsibilities for certain people. And you need to have team meetings.
Yeah.
You all got to get on the same page. And if you're not, like, things can go wrong and customers are not happy.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of work between us, and like, you have those moments where it's like, well, I'm working this much and you're working, because we had to juggle, we had to create a schedule where it was like, okay, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm taking Dakota in the mornings, you get to work, then we switch. And that's all nice and dandy until deadlines are extended, right? Or until someone boss is like, I need this right now. And like, and it gets hot. And so thankfully Dakota went unscathed, but our relationship, it was a lot of work. It was really hard.
Yeah. I do feel like relationships went through a very strenuous time last year.
Oh, yeah. Some people that quarantined with their partners and they had never lived together. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those relationships are no longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't been in many relationships. The ones I have lasted at least a few years. So every time that I have been in it, though, I'm like, this is hard work. This is like not, yeah.
Not for the faint of heart, you know. I have my little group chat with like 3 of my best friends that I've known for years, and we're all moms now. And we talk about everything in that chat, from motherhood to sex to stock market and to marriage. And, you know, being in partnership with someone, you know, and this is across the board, you know, friendships, girlfriend, boyfriend, marriage, but the stakes feel much higher when you're married, right? And especially when there's kids involved. Mm-hmm. Being in partnership is really about understanding the true reflection of who you are and how that person is willing to show up in the world, you know, adjacent to this other person. Mm-hmm. And like, how much are you willing to sustain the things that that person might be working out while you're not trying to work anything out, right? Like, because that's the other thing. It's like the kind of like happiness meter. Like when I'm really doing really well and my partner is maybe not doing well, what does that dynamic look like? Mm-hmm. And that's actually like kind of a lot of, if you get down to the nitty gritty of like the psychology of humans, often like the conflicts that happen with your like-minded people that you love, unless they're like there's a very clear disagreement about a fundamental issue, but like the everyday conflict, it's usually rooted in like how happy somebody is, mm-hmm. You know, and what's triggering them at the time. And so it's a balance, you know, and I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in couples therapy too. I think it's really important to have, you know, someone mediating your relationship, mm-hmm. telling you about yourself from a different perspective, because sometimes you're not trying to hear it from your partner, you know.
yeah you like need to like step outside of the two of you, of yourself. Yeah I would neutral. Yeah, that was like, I would say one of the biggest eye-opening experiences for me in my last relationship was realizing like we're not always going to be on the same page emotionally. Like sometimes I'm going to be in the season of healing and he's going to be thriving, and some, you know, and it's going to look different. And how is that going to work out? Yeah. So getting into, you had mentioned that, you know, things were kind of slowing down with work, but then it started to pick back up. And you had a recent, I love your post captions, by the way. Oh. They're so beautiful and reflective and just so authentic. Like that's like the spirit that you have. I love it. And you shared in one of your recent posts that, you know, you're very proud to be a founder and you scaled your business in 2020. What advice, you know, would you give to those who are trying to scale their business? You having done so in a year that was very unprecedented, I feel like you have like some kind of, I mean, granted, you have a lot of years of experience as well under your belt. So what advice or like insight do you have to like give on that?
You know, there are different business models, right? I'm an agency model, you know, the deal. we get hired to support and create marketing or content for other brands or movements, whatever it is. So the way that I see scalability with my business model is reflected in the hiring that I get to do. And we just we just filed our 1099s, and we paid out over $80,000 in contractors last year. For me, that scalability that's the fulfillment for me, because that shows me that what Word is doing is also affecting the lives of others, right? And it's not like I'm stockpiling a bunch of money for myself and my family, which is nice too, but that's not what I'm here to do. And so, there's different business models, and it just depends, what you're out here trying to do. But if you're trying to do what I'm trying to do, I think I have a few pieces of advice. Just the first one is you have to keep going, because I didn't really make any money for 3 years. And honestly, I haven't even looked at my actual profits, after spending on my rent and spending on my other joyful things that I like to buy and investing money. I have no idea what my actual profits are going to look like. But I don't do business that way. I just know that I lived a comfortable life all of last year, right? And so for me, that's enough. But prior to that, for the 3 years prior, it wasn't like that. And, I had started a brand new business, and, our industry is all about, honestly, who and do they trust you? And so beyond keep going, make sure that your public persona is spotless. All you have in this business is your reputation. And that's not to say that my reputation is perfect. I'm sure there's some people out there that do not like me. I have an ex-business partner. I don't think she likes me. I know she doesn't like me, but I know that what I did, I worked in integrity, right? And so it's like what you said, what we were saying before, your ways of existing may not always align with other folks, or they may not understand why you behaved the way you did. And you have to be okay with that, right? And you need to be confident in your moves, right? Be confident in making decisions, be confident in spending more than you're going to make sometimes. A lot of the work that we do is content creation, and we're hiring a lot of talent, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. I spend a lot of money on our content, and there was a project this last year where I think my agency only took in $2,000 out of a big budget. But for me, it was worth it, because that's my calling card. That's my reputation. And I know that it's paying off, because now I have people and brands reaching out to me. I don't even pitch myself. I don't pitch. I was pitching so much before. I was pitching and pitching and pitching. I don't have to pitch anymore, because the stuff that I would like to come to me is just coming to me. But that's just because I'm pretty sure it's because, one, we're good at what we do, but also because I'm a reliable, trustworthy person that people want to work with. And at the end of the day, when you're providing a service, trust and transparency over everything. It's like what they say, 85% of the job is showing up, and so, keep going and just be impeccable with your word and with the content that you put out. And then, on the more technical side, invest in your company. If you're in the content creating world, invest in gear if you can do that, because that will actually bring your profit margins up, because you won't have to rent so many things all the time, or you can provide gear when you're hiring people or hiring talent. But, I think it's different for everybody. It really depends on what your business model is. I'm sure if you brought in somebody that was a direct to consumer brand, like they would have all of these hacks, because it's a much more, you can manipulate that market in a much more tangible way. You can't with what we do, because with what we do is really based off of who we know and how much we've been in the game.
Yeah.
That's it. There are some folks who come in the game and in 6 months they have like 10 accounts that I wish I could have.
Yeah.
That's probably because their mentor was this person. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's part luck and it's part just tenacity. Like you just have to stay. It's a lot of stock market, like you have to be willing to just like stick in the market and trust.
Yeah. On the note of like, everyone's path, entrepreneurial path being different, looking different because of their advantages, disadvantages, privileges, etc. That's something that I think people really, really need to keep in mind when comparison comes into play. Do you feel like that's something that you've struggled with in the past or are?
It's an interesting question for me because of my past. So prior to having Word, I actually worked for my family. We have an indie Latin music publishing company called Maimba Music. And it's my mom's company. I worked with her for 8 years. It was funny because I often felt like my, that nepotism was more hurtful than helpful. Because I felt like people never actually took, like a lot of people didn't take me seriously because they were like, oh, she's just there because of her mom. And it was like an interesting place to be. But now, having carried along a lot of those contacts, a lot of those colleagues into the work that I do now, I've noticed that, the privilege of being in spaces and having access to people is the most important. It's like one of the most important pieces towards creating any career, right? Whether you want to be an entrepreneur or not. And I pride myself on trying to open more doors for people so that they can have access, right? Because the reality is that even though I worked for my mom, she never actually introduced me to anyone. I had that foundation, which gave me a paycheck and access. But once the door was open, I had to physically walk through that door and say, hello, my name is Zoila. And this is what I do. Like, let's do something together and like follow up and like do all the work. So there's something to be said about access. But once that door is open for you, it's about what you do with it. Like you can't, and I had to really give myself grace over time because for a while I wondered if I had earned it or not. I was like, did I earn this or was it just given to me? And I was like, no, I earned this. Like I made those things happen. And I'm my mother's daughter because she's the same way. Like she made those things happen just in a different way. Like she's, very much on like the business administrative side. She's a paperwork lady where I'm more of like in the community, like it's a different vibe. But like, I was like, no, I walked. Yeah. Like maybe she helped me open the door, but I walked through and I got everything that I deserved from the work that I did. And so, and that's the other thing. It's like especially for like women of color or people of color, like somebody might open that door for you, but many times we're walking into rooms that aren't for us or don't want us to be there. And so how are you stepping up to the plate for yourself once you get in there? Because I'll open a door for you. I've done it. I do it all the time, but I can't walk you in. Like you have to walk. I can walk you in rather, but I can't like, this isn't a debutante ball. And like, you got to figure it out once you're in the door. And that's like, there's something to be said about being ready. Right. I recently got introduced to someone last year, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm looking back on it, we're still in contact, but I wasn't ready yet. Like that contact, like she's still there, right? This woman who I am obsessed with and will eventually do something with is still there, but I wasn't ready yet. And that's also like the other thing to recognize when, you know, something doesn't necessarily come to fruition.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't ready. Like what was even going to really happen?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember like that came to me so vividly when I landed one of like my biggest dream clients. And this was like after years of like wanting to work with them so bad. And then when I finally did, it was a challenge. And at that point, you know, I made it happen, and I was able to make it happen because of where I was. But when I actually was there, when I actually walked in the door and had to do what I had to do, I was like, there is no way that when I first started really wanting to work with this person, I could have done it or handled it, because I needed these years. I needed this time to like step into who I was in that moment to receive it properly.
Yeah. I think that that's such a profound thing to say. And I think that more people need to sit with that sentiment, because social media has made access to things feel so close and simple. And you see all these like Twitter threads and Instagram posts about access, and I want this and I want that. And it's like, okay, but are you going to even know what to do with it when it comes to you? Like, you need to sit down and think about, if somebody were to introduce you to Quentin Tarantino, if somebody were to introduce you to Ava DuVernay, you know, what are you even going to tell them? You're just going to tell them your life story? They don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so much more than that. And so it's like, we all want to have access. And I think that's a great thing, because I think the first step towards getting what you want, whether it's career or personal related, is knowing that you want that thing and then being able to have the energy to go after it. I know a lot of very talented people who are so debilitated by anxiety that they don't go after anything. And it hurts me, because I'm like, yo, you're amazing, but I can't sit, like, no one can sit there and like hold your hand and push you through. So I think the first step is knowing that you want something and being able to go after it. But you also have to be super prepared.
Yeah.
Like what they say, when it rains, it pours. You better have an umbrella or dance in the rain, whatever it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Like, I always express gratitude just even to simply have a sense of direction and knowing what I want. And I think also on the note of all of this is like, you know, also thinking about, if you did receive that thing you want and you were given the opportunity to go for it, but you're not ready, how is that going to detriment the relationship with that person or that thing? You know, like, you also have to keep in mind, like, you know, I want this to be sustainable. I want this to have longevity. Yeah. You
can't always just jump, you know, because the net might not appear. That happens often in relationships. I find it mostly with men going after women, right? Like, they'll be like, I'm just not ready yet. And the girl's like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, that's literally what it is. Sometimes it's like people just are not ready. And that's something that we need to learn to be okay with. You know? I don't think I ever told you what I was grateful for. I wrote it down.
I know. We just got into the conversation. Right, please share what your expression of
gratitude. Well, I feel like it's the reason why I brought it up is because it's really aligned with what we're saying right now. So I wrote down that I'm grateful for the opportunity to give and the opportunity to receive. That's how I feel today. You know, I taken me so long to learn how to ask for help. I've always been somebody that was like, I can give, I can give, I can give. I have this, you can have it, you can have it. But I was never able to really ask for or seek support. It was always very challenging for me. And my therapist last year was like, you need to stop giving so much and look to receive and let people help you. And, you know, find a mentor or whatever it is that you need to get you feeling like you're confident, right? And that you have the tools and the mindset to be where you want to be, or be who you want to be. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, once you can open up that kind of, once you open up that door, like, I feel like the possibilities are endless. You know, if you're a naturally giving person, that means you're naturally abundant, right? Like, you have things, but if you're not also receiving, you're just draining yourself. So you have to be able to accept and take the support, you know, and ask for it. So I just feel really grateful for that today, you know, and like letting go of power. You know, that's what it is. It's a release. It's a release of control.
Yeah. And there's power in that. There's power in being confident enough and having that faith in yourself to be able to give and not be afraid to lose from giving. Mm-hmm. But that's also I love that that's what you're grateful for, because acknowledging that you're able to be in a space to receive is an achievement, honestly, in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just feeling so grateful. Even after my call with my accountant, I was like, I had to get a new accountant, and, you know, money is uncomfortable at times. And sometimes I used to feel like embarrassed about how I would spend my money, and like I didn't want to show it to people, you know. And I had this amazing accountant. We got off the call, and I was just like, I told her, I was like, Bethany, I love you. Because she just made me feel like she's so knowledgeable in her work that she's confident enough to hold my stress and my anxiety that I carry with my own stuff, you know? And it was just like, it felt like therapy. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
A good accountant will turn you out.
Oh my goodness. It is a journey finding the right one. It's like finding the right therapist.
Honestly, I'm telling you, you got yourself a good therapist, a good accountant, a nice little spiritual practice. Like, woo, no one can stop you.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm still searching for a really good accountant.
I'll send you their info.
I would love that. I would appreciate that.
It's an organization called Collective, and they actually work with people like us. Mm-hmm. But I ended up just getting two really amazing people that did like my onboarding. And now I'm like, I only want y'all. Anyone else?
Yeah, because it's another thing too, having an account that understands your line of work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a big difference. So in regards to, there was something you said just now, something about ritual, or yes. So having a good accountant, having a good therapist, and good spiritual practice. There you go. What is your practice? Like, what does that look like for you right now?
My practice right now is whatever I can do that just gives me a few moments to myself. I was very, very rigid for a while with my morning routine. And then it kind of like phased out a little bit in the pandemic, and then it came back, and then it was out. And now I'm kind of in a place where I'm like, I'm not going to put stress and anxiety around the ways that I find peace for myself. because when I do that, it removes some of the joy from me. You know, it's like, it's not to say that like having a morning routine and being really, you know, vigilant with that is a negative thing. It's just that if that's not the season that I'm in right now, I need to learn how to be okay with that. And so, you know, speaking of my therapist, like I try to journal every night, and then write like a little schedule out for myself, because my days are super packed. Like I think you're like the 9th call I've been on today. It's like a nightmare, but like who needs that many calls? But I would put down like, you know, I would write my whole schedule out. So from the moment I wake up to the moment I shut down from work, like even like Dakota time was like written in Dakota time from 5:30 to 8:30. And I was writing out like waking up at 6 a.m., but I wasn't waking up at 6 a.m. And like my therapist was like, Zoila, stop putting a time. Like if you want to write down that you wake up, just write that down. She was like, because every time you write down 6 a.m. and you don't wake up at 6 a.m., you're guilting yourself into something that you don't need to feel guilty about. You need to give yourself the rhythm of what you need at that moment. And sometimes it's going to, like yesterday, I woke up at 6 a.m. I had a 6:30 workout, and that was the day. Today, I woke up at 7 and I looked at the stock market for a half an hour. It is what it is. You know what I mean? That's what my soul needed today.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's, you can look at it in two ways. It can be like, oh, like she doesn't have control over her mornings. Or you can say, oh, like she has control over herself because she's allowing herself to be and flow with what she needs on that day. And it is what it is. And maybe one day I'll get back to my like very rigid morning routine, because it goes and flows. Some mornings it's like I'm up, I'm doing my thing. And some days I'm not. Some days I'm like, I'm going to do like a tarot reading for myself and like sit here for a half an hour and meditate. And that's what I need sometimes. And I fully believe in the morning routine as a practice, especially if you feel imbalanced. Like if you feel out of balance, get yourself in a routine so that you can get back on balance. But I don't feel out of balance right now. I feel very zen. And so this is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like this theme of like acknowledging the season of life that you are in and it being different and it looking different keeps coming up in our conversation in different ways. And I love that. Yeah.
I think we need to, you know, I believe in routine and discipline, because we need that to give ourselves the space to do things. But recognizing that may not be what you need right now is also a special form of discipline. You know? And being okay with where you are, being okay and content with where you're at.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, like I'm good right here.
Yeah. And another, I want to bring up two last things. And they were both posts that you made recently. And one was about how you're granting yourself weekends. You're creating those boundaries for yourself that you didn't have before. And I love that.
The weekends are like, I don't touch my computer, you know, unless sometimes I do, but it's like, you know, it's for my special things. Like I'm working on developing something, and my husband and me are working on the creative for it together. And we did an hour brainstorm on Sunday while Dakota was napping, but it was like very joyful. It felt fun. It didn't feel like I was like working, you know, but I'm really enjoying shutting down on the weekends. And to be between you and me, well, I guess, and anyone else that's listening, I also have cut Fridays off. So I don't work on Fridays unless it's like a very special need of a client and like need a meeting. but they're blocked off from my calendar. I told all my clients that we don't meet on Fridays, and I have these big stickers. I have a huge calendar on my wall, and I have huge stickers that are like a beer bottle. What else? It's like sunglasses, a watermelon, and they're on my Fridays.
Yeah. I love that.
And I'm like, no Fridays. And then on Mondays, I don't really start work until 11 because I have therapy at 10 a.m. So I don't like to work before therapy unless I unless there's like some pressing thing happening.
Yeah.
But giving myself those boundaries has helped me to condense the time that I'm actually doing the work, and I'm actually way more productive. There's space for the 4-day work week.
Yeah.
And I hope it comes through soon, because it's like, we don't need to be working 5 days a week, working 12-hour days. Like, what are you even doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Me and a friend yesterday were talking about finding balance. And I do feel like it is attainable. And I do feel like, it's a work in progress. And you do have to acknowledge, deadlines and the season of life that you're in, and,
Yeah.
But I don't feel like, like you said, 5 days a week, 12-hour days are healthy at all.
Especially for us, like, what's the point of being your own boss if you can't like be your own boss?
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah.
And it's working for me right now. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk in a few months and I'm like back to working 6 days a week and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Not, yeah. But like, it feels really good to just be in a space where also, like, when I'm not working on the weekends, I'm not judging myself for not working, because that's the other piece of it. I think that's probably the most challenging part about setting the work boundaries or the productivity boundaries, is releasing that guilt, from that past, from that person that you used to be, because that's really what you're doing. You're trying to become, or you're actively ushering in a new person that does not carry those tendencies, that does not do that stuff. And so you got to tell that person to like kick rocks, because they'll be all up in your ear like, girl, you should be working right now. You have this. Why don't you do this? Why are you doing this email? Like, they'll be in your ear.
Yeah.
And then, we'll just like mindlessly get on the phone. You won't even know you're on the phone. And then you'll be like, oh my God, I've been on the phone for 2 minutes. Like, like you won't even know that the phone is in your hand. So like that part of just telling that little voice to kick rocks, I think that's probably the most challenging part. Yeah. I don't know if you know about my working hat, my thinking hat. I post about my thinking hat. Yeah. But it's right here. So this is my thinking hat.
Yes.
It's a baklava that my friend Abigail's brand, Matek, made. So it's like a cold weather skiing hat. And we live in LA. And I just really wanted the hat because it's so cute. But I was like, I'm going to use this my thinking hat. So when I'm off hours and I have to think about work, I go and I put this hat on. Because like, how long can you sit in a hat like this?
Yes, I love that. That's like a really playful way to set a boundary. I love that.
Yeah. I have my therapist to thank for that. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to bring up is this really beautiful line that you wrote down. And I love it. It said something along the lines of, because I didn't write it all exactly down, but how you are, and I think this is also kind of in correlation to what we're talking about. You're supporting the woman you are today, and you're not putting so much focus or stress on the woman you think you should be. Mm-hmm. I love that. Like, I'm going to write that on a sticky note. And so I can look at it often, because this does tie into what we were just talking about. That pressure that you put, that unnecessary pressure you put on yourself of like, I should be doing this. I should be this woman. I should be this, it's like, again, acknowledging who you are today, what season you're in right now. I love that.
And I'm so happy that resonated with you. And thank you for even reminding me of that, because that is who that line is who I'm working. That is who I want to be. Right. And so to be her, I have to literally do that. Right. Which is not think about her, which is like a weird thing, kind of weird paradigm. But like, the pressures that we put on ourselves are so correlated to our childhood. Right. And for me in particular, I was a latchkey kid, like my mom was working all the time, and it was really up to me to entertain myself, to teach myself, to figure things out. And I think that created a person who didn't know how to not be constantly trying to impress or even a person who was like not willing to be shackled down, right? Like you're almost impressing by acting out in a way. Like that's kind of like, I think, the kind of kid I probably was. I was like, okay, well, if no one's watching, like, boo, you know what I mean? And what that does is it bred this person who was constantly thinking about like the next step, what's the next step? Because there was no room, no one was really watching to see if I was messing up, right? And so over time, when you bring that into somebody who's super ambitious and career oriented, it develops into this person who's never satisfied. Over time, that's what you're doing. You're like, because if no one's ever really checking for you, there's not even like a ceiling for you to reach. So you're just constantly like, how can I push the bar? How can I push the bar? Well, I need more. And like, I'm not good enough. This isn't enough. Because no one's checking for you. We need validation. People say that you need to find validation in yourself, but I don't agree with that. I think parents need to validate their children every single day. I love you every single day. You don't need to say you're great at this or you're so talented, but you're so observant. What a great joke. I love your singing voice. Validate your children, because if not, they're going to learn to be these people who have never been validated. So they're not even really seeking validation. They're just like pushing because they don't even know what it means to reach a peak at all. Like, I don't think I ever knew what it felt like to be accomplished, because I was never super validated as a kid, and not by my mom's fault. She just wasn't around. I've had people be like, Zoila, what do you mean? Like, you've accomplished so much. And I don't see my own accomplishments. I'm like, because to me, they don't look like what everybody else has accomplished. I'm not like a corporate person. Like, I've never had one of those big jobs. I don't have like a ton of accolades and awards. So I, for a long time, never really understood what it meant to feel fully accomplished. And so that sentiment of like giving who I am today what she needs to thrive is just simply about understanding, like, this is the moment. And today, all I need to thrive is water, some sleep, and maybe I need to like hit 2 deadlines.
Yeah.
And hug my kid. Because, the trajectory of our lives are just, a little bit at a time, each day at a time. It's like, if you're so concentrating on like hitting a ceiling, and like, what is the goal? Like, I have long-term plans, of course. I'm not saying like throw your long-term plans out the window. I still want to like have a TV show in 5 years. But am I so concerned with what I'm supposed to be doing today? I can't be. I need to just concentrate on today. If I don't concentrate on today, how am I going to get anything done for tomorrow? I'm still thinking about what I was supposed to do yesterday.
Yeah. Being in the present moment really does have an intimate relationship with validation and being good enough. Yeah.
You have to stay present and give that person what they need to thrive today. You know, I'm proud of myself.
Yes, yes, yeah. And for people who, I mean, for myself too, like having to validate myself looks a lot like everything that you just said, and looks a lot like telling myself, I am good enough. This is good enough. This is enough. Like, yeah. And I'm proud of myself.
I'm proud of you too, girl.
And I'm proud of you. And I didn't say this in the beginning of our conversation, but I just see you as like just such a light. And like I mentioned about how I love your captions, you just really give off this like genuinity. I don't know if that's a word, but like just so authentic and like real. Like I feel like, you know, like if you're in my life, like you're someone who's really real. And
I
like
try to keep it real.
Yeah. And I
at times.
It's beautiful. And I just wanted to express my gratitude for you. And I'm really honored to have this conversation with you. It's a really beautiful talk, and for your space. Like I honor your time and energy.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And I'm so honored to be here. I was like, oh my gosh, he wants me to come talk. And I'm, you know, like I appreciate every person that's out here giving themselves to people, because we don't have to do any of that, you know, and it's honestly much easier to not.
Yeah.
It's much easier to just stay quiet. And so I really am proud of you, and I'm thankful that you invited me here today. It's been really nice.